Hi, I'm Perry, and you're listening to The Beauty Brains. Hello and welcome to The Beauty Brains, a show where real cosmetic chemists answer your beauty product questions and give you an insider's look at the cosmetic industry. This is episode 402. I'm your host, Perry Romanowski, and with me today is nobody. It's just a solo episode here today. Valerie, of course, is off, taking care of her baby. She actually had a baby boy, and perhaps we'll get more details about that when she returns early next month. No doubt, she's taking some time for the baby. Apparently, babies take some work. But the work goes on here at Beauty Brain Central. And on today's show, we're going to cover lots of questions, including, are the IS Clinical Hydra Cool products special? What do we think of the anti-aging effectiveness of the Pavise sunscreen? What ingredients might be responsible for the great results in a conditioner? And what can be done about under-eye dark circles? And finally, how do you practice sun safety diligently? I hope you do it more diligently than me. I'm not very good at it, but I can talk about it. All right, this is normally where we do chit-chat, and of course, I interact with Valerie, but Valerie's not here. In fact, the only one here is my cat Teddy, and hopefully I had to shut the door because he kept jumping on my lap. It's not the best thing to try to podcast and pay attention while, you have a cat. But, he's doing good. All the outdoor kitties are all doing well. It's nice summer here in Chicago, so they just mostly lounge around underneath bushes and things. But, summer does make me go outside a bit more. I go out to do my running. My leg is still kind of gimpy, but seems to be getting better. So maybe I don't need that physical therapy after all. We'll see. I guess I'm terrible at making doctor appointments. I don't have anything against the doctor. I'd be perfectly happy to go. It's the appointment part. You have to call people or figure it out online. It's all very complex. Our health, I need a personal assistant to do this for me. Otherwise, it doesn't get done. But the truth is, it does remind me of realities about any condition, whether it's cosmetic or health related. There are three things that can happen with any kind of treatment that you do. First, things could get better. So you do a treatment, it gets better. Another thing that could happen is it could get worse. You do a treatment and it keeps getting worse. And then the third thing that can happen is nothing. It stays exactly the same. You do the treatment and it stays the same. So get better, get worse, stay the same. Those are the three things that can happen with any health condition or, any beauty condition, wrinkles or the way you look or dandruff or whatever. But you know what? Whether you do a treatment or not, those same three things can happen. So if you do nothing, it can get better, it can get worse, or it could stay the same. And for now, I guess my doing nothing for my leg it's getting better. So do I need to do anything? I don't know. I probably should. All right, normally we would talk about the news, and I thought I'd do something a little different since solo show. Why not? I'll just do a quick, let me just talk about a topic that, it's been on my mind a bit, and I haven't really talked about it recently. So let's talk about natural and organic products. I get these in my inbox all the time, products talking about how organic or natural they are. And, honestly, as a chemist, it kind of bugs me because I'm a little bit tired of watching smart consumers get sucked in by these fancy marketing stories, the packaging, the green leaves on the label, and this promise that a natural product is better, and by implication, anything that's synthetic is not better. And here's a spoiler alert. Natural is not better. Cosmetics are not natural. You can't go out and grow yourself a skin lotion. You just can't. There's no skin lotion plant. No, it's not natural. You have to gather up the materials, take them into a laboratory, and mix them together in the right proportions to create a lotion that you're going to use. No natural plant is going to do that for you. There isn't that. The closest you can get to a real natural product would be something like coconut oil, where, the coconut makes it, you squeeze it out of the oil, out of the plant, and you got that oil. That's it. Just that one ingredient. I mean, coconut milk, something like that. So things that plants produce. But plants don't produce lipstick, and they don't produce moisturizers, and they don't produce cleansers. There's nothing natural about cosmetics. You see, they try to use that natural terms in the same way that food, they try to do natural for food. And for food, there is natural. You can go out and grab a banana off a tree and eat it because it was naturally grown. It's food. It's plants. That's what they grow, food. You can't go to a bush and pick off a lipstick because plants do not grow cosmetics. So cosmetics are not natural. Okay. Now, you might say, well, it's not natural, but it's made of natural stuff. And okay, it starts that way, but you have to process everything to make it into a cosmetic. And in those processing steps, you make it less and less natural and more synthetic. And so really there's no products on the market, with the exception of, I think Jason has a coconut oil that you could just buy for your hair. But besides that, there are no natural cosmetics. There just aren't. And certainly there are no natural color cosmetics. Because, again, while the colorants can be natural, they're not out there naturally in the form that you could use them in a cosmetic. Now, let's talk also about safety. Now, people often assume that if a product is organic, then it must be safer. But here's the truth. Nature doesn't care about your skin or your hair. Nature doesn't care what you look like, quite frankly. The natural human look would be, I don't know, something like pictures of Neanderthals or something like that. That's caveman kind of stuff. Like, we aren't really, it's not natural to try to look good with cosmetics. It's just not natural, And, nature is often trying to kill us. There's poison, there's arsenic, radiation. I mean, these things are all natural and they're all dangerous. Even petrolatum that you get from petroleum and from oil. Oil's natural. We don't synthesize oil. We just drill that right out of the ground, and so that's natural. And then things like essential oils. They can cause phototoxicity, allergic reactions, skin irritation. These are natural things, and they're not more safe. And if you talk about performance, the synthetic ingredients were invented because they were improvements on what we were using for natural things. One that I think of is shellac. We used to use shellac for hairstyling. It was like hairspray. And shellac is, it's a natural resin that comes from the secretion of an insect. And the insects are in India or something like that. Anyway, it's natural. And the problem with it is it holds your hair, but you can't get it off. It's hard to get off. So thus we invented the synthetic polymer, polyvinyl pyrrolidone, which holds wonderfully, but then you can wash it off. So that's nice. So when you're talking about performance, synthetic products are designed to work better than anything that's natural. And they do. They really do. Now, if you want a moisturizer that actually moisturizes, or, a retinoid that doesn't break down before it reaches your skin, chances are you're going to need some extra boost from science to make sure that those things are stabilized and that they work. That doesn't make it bad, that just makes it more effective. And here's the kicker, the thing that nobody wants to talk about. These organic products and natural products are often worse for the environment. Yeah, worse. I mean, organic farming, it uses more land, more water, it has lower yields, and if you're harvesting like rare plants and some of your luxury serums, you're not saving the planet. You're actually contributing to the loss of biodiversity. Compared that to some lab-made actives, these things are scalable, they're consistent, and they're far less demanding of natural resources. We're just much more efficient at creating these synthetic things. We know all the steps in making them. Sustainability isn't just about natural. It's, sometimes you gotta use your brain. But the thing that I think most frustrates me about this is the way that these things are marketed. Like, the whole natural equals virtuous, or this narrative. It's just pure branding. These companies are selling you an identity. They're not selling you any extra benefits. You're not just buying that lotion. You're buying this illusion that you're a better person doing better things for the environment by picking this. It's fear marketing. It's guilt marketing. They make you fear chemicals. They make you fear science. They make you fear, man-made things. And they get you to spend more money on products that don't work as good. So, I'm not saying that all natural ingredients are bad. No, there's plenty of great ingredients that are natural. And, if you want to tend more towards natural cosmetics, you can find products that work perfectly fine. It's just that they're not natural. They're maybe a little less synthesized than other things, but let's not kid ourselves. Cosmetics are not natural. So if you really want skincare that works, I would just skip the stories and just look for ingredients that actually work, get evidence, and don't worry about where they came from, because that doesn't matter when it comes to performance. All right, well, that's my rant for today. So let's move on to some of the questions that were sent in. First question was sent in by Deb. She says, are you familiar with IS Clinical products, specifically the Hydra Cool, their hyaluronic acid product, and their Pro Heal Serum? I am new to IS and always wary because I have rosacea. Any thoughts regarding this rather pricey line of products? It would be most appreciated. And then I looked up the products here. So let's talk about this Hydra Cool Serum. So what's in it? The main thing that they say is in it is hyaluronic acid. They have sodium hyaluronate in it, and it's the second ingredient in there. And then they have pantothenic acid, or like panthenol, pentylene glycol, another humectant, and then some mushrooms and centella extracts. It's got this lightweight texture, so it's probably aesthetically it's nice. But let's talk about these actives. I mean, the product costs over $100. Like, whoa. I mean, that's up there. But okay, but that's me. Let's talk about, hyaluronic acid is everywhere. There's literally hundreds of cheaper options that exist to just hydrate the skin like that. And don't get me started on it. Glycerin is perfectly fine compared to hyaluronic acid, because it actually, in practice, works better. Then there's menthol in there, which is just this gimmicky cooling thing. It feels kind of cool. You put menthol on your skin, it kind of gives that wow, it's working kind of feel. But it can actually irritate sensitive skin. And so if you have rosacea, it's probably not a good idea to use that. Then they have this extract overload. Okay, centella and mushrooms and all these botanical extracts, they all sound nice, but honestly, that's all the claims ingredient. These things are not actually doing it. If there was a compounder who was making these products and they forgot to put the mushroom extract in there, you would notice exactly no difference in performance, because these things aren't really doing anything measurable except giving you a story to learn about. And mushrooms, it sounds natural, doesn't it? And then as far as the marketing goes here, there's really no evidence that this combination of ingredients does anything beyond what a hyaluronic acid serum would do, or some other kind of calming gel. So I would say this is, this may be a pleasant, cool feeling serum when you use it, but I don't see anything revolutionary here, and it's definitely overpriced. So, if it feels good to you, it's not gonna it's not gonna perform better. Now let's look at their Pro Heal Serum, and they say it's got L-ascorbic acid, vitamin C, vitamin E, okay, olive leaf extract, zinc sulfate, retinol, kojic acid. It's got a lot of ingredients. In fact, there's probably too many ingredients that are just crammed in there together. Ascorbic acid is notoriously unstable and irritating, so by the time you get it, probably you're not getting any of the oxidation value or the antioxidant value of ascorbic acid. And then when you have alcohol in there, you have retinol, kojic acid, zinc sulfate. This could be a red flag formula for sensitive skin, especially rosacea-prone skin. Those ingredients could cause some problems for that. And they had this antioxidant cocktail. While vitamin C and E theoretically can work synergistically together, that's from the there's SkinCeuticals had this patent on it for C and E and ferulic acid. The IS Clinical, they haven't really released any detailed stability data. So, when they put those ingredients together, do they stay active or do they degrade? You can't really know. Now, if you look at this product, many of the ingredients, the ascorbic acid, the retinol, they can aggravate sensitive skin. So even if the olive leaf or the zinc may be put in there to calm the inflammation, in theory, you could still have a problem with this. So it's not, it's not that promising if you have a concern about rosacea already. Again, this is a $165 serum. You'd expect some sort of published trials or outcomes. It's just they offer you a marketing copy, so not any supporting science. Although I have to say, I would be skeptical of the supporting science too. So I'm just generally skeptical of research published by a company that's trying to get you to buy something. But that's how the cosmetic industry is. Now, IS Clinical, they position themselves as clinical grade skincare, but they don't have peer-reviewed studies. They don't have independent comparisons. In fact, they give you very little formulation detail at all. So the bottom line is, as we always say here, the price of something does not tell you anything about its performance. And IS Clinical they have nice packaging, they have polished marketing, of course, it's a prestige positioning, and that's often what it is. But mostly you're just paying for the branding. There's no breakthrough formulations that I see here based on the ingredient lists and such. Now, if you do have rosacea, you're probably better off looking for something that's a more simple product, fragrance-free products, something that's designed for barrier repair, not like this cosmeceutical things. I know La Roche-Posay has some products, Vanicream, even The Ordinary has some products that you might try that you can get all of these same benefits for a lot less money. All right, thanks for that question. Next up is Angela. Dear Beauty Brains, I just discovered your podcast and love it. Oh, well, thank you, Angela. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I would like to ask your opinion about the anti-aging and sun protection effectiveness of Pavise sunscreen. Thank you, Angela. All right, Pavise sunscreen. When you asked about it, I had not heard of this before, and yet now I see it's outsmart skin damage aging with diamond core. Ooh, diamond core technology. Skin that behaves younger, powered by patented biotechnology. Okay, they're going for the science play here. So, at its core, Pavise, as I can see it, they use 15% zinc oxide. And zinc oxide is an approved mineral sunscreen filter in the US. That's effective and safe, so it works. But this is hardly groundbreaking compared to the countless other mineral sunscreens that are out there. There's tons of them. But that's the thing about sunscreen. That's hard for companies to sell sunscreen because everybody is restricted, at least in the United States, and around the world, you're restricted to the ingredients, just different ones. But everyone is restricted to the same ingredients that they can use for the active ingredient, the part that makes the sunscreen. Now, you can put other ingredients in there, and you can get some variation there. But as far as if you're making a sunscreen, there are actives you have to use. In the United States, zinc oxide is one of those actives. Titanium dioxide is another one of those actives. And then there are all these organic chemical sunscreens, avobenzone, the ones like that. So there's 16. There's really only 8 that are still produced in the United States. But anyway, everybody has to use those. And then so if you got to use those, and they tell you the maximum you can use for zinc, for example, is 25%. They use 15% here, and presumably they get to some level. Now, they have this diamond core technology, and this is purely marketing spin because, it's just zinc oxide mixed with diamond powder. Now, they claim it eradicates 80% of the reactive oxygen species and boosts collagens, but then they don't provide any studies on that, and they're not transparent about their methodology. So, Okay, so you can just say that. I mean, how are you going to measure that you've eradicated 80% of the reactive oxygen species? And just because you did that, does that mean anything? 80%, but if 20% will do just as much damage, you haven't really helped anything. So I don't know. It doesn't help for me. Then this is touted as SPF 30, and then they have the PA plus, which is the way that that's the Japanese and Korean rating. We don't really do that in the United States. There's only SPF, so it's SPF 30. That is regulated, but the PA++, which indicates a UVA protection, right now that's not regulated in the U.S. So the actual performance, that's just depends on the various test conditions. There's not really a good way to test for UVA protection, despite what companies will put on there. There are tests, don't get me wrong. There's just not a good one because you see, SPF testing is easy. Sun protection factor is what you can measure when somebody burns. How many minutes does it take them to burn? And you put their cream on, and then you can see how long does it take to burn with our cream on, and then you get your SPF. So SPF 30 means that you can be in the sun for 30 times however minutes it takes you to burn. So if you're a person who goes out in the sun and you burn in 1 minute, you wear an SPF 30, well, you can be out in the sun for 30 minutes. If you burn in 10 minutes and you wear an SPF 30, well, theoretically, you can go out in the sun for 300 minutes, or what is that, 6 hours? Or 5 hours? Well, I wouldn't, you want to reapply. But that's the idea with SPF. So there's a way to measure it. With UVA, we don't know how to measure UVA because it takes a long time. UVA is the one that's responsible for tanning. And so it takes a long time for tanning to show up. So there's no test you can do to measure how well something protects from UV. No good test, in my opinion, for measuring UVA. So anyway, that's why we haven't worked out here in the U.S. Now, Pavise brags about having this photo-aging defense cocktail, and that includes niacinamide, astaxanthin, pycnogenol, silymarin, licorice extract, tranexamin, all these things that you have in other things. But, while individually some of these might be able to show benefits if you isolate them, whether that translates to a product, I don't know. But when you cram them all together at all these different concentrations, how are you going to know that this is are they effective? Are they stable? Do they have any meaningful effect at all? They could just put on there at a small level and not do anything, and that's very common here. So I'm skeptical of it. Like, if they forgot one, it's a lot of times these ingredients are like that mushroom extract, where whether it's in there or not, you're not really going to notice. Now, whether these are in there at high enough levels to do anything with all the other stuff going on, I'm a little skeptical of that. Now, this brand features stats like 87% of people noticed reduced photo damage, but, how did they get that? That looks like it's a survey users. And, honestly, I've been involved in enough consumer surveys where you can pretty much get any kind of data you want for something like that. How is a consumer going to notice reduced photo damage? Well, if you go out in the sun and you don't get sunburn, you say, oh, I didn't get photo damage. Well, of course you didn't, because, you have sunscreen on. So, I don't put a lot of faith in the survey users or consumer reported results. Of course you're going to have good results. I would say, why was it only 87%? Why didn't everybody notice? But, so this isn't controlled clinical data. I'm way skeptical of surveys. There's plenty of room for placebo and biases here. Now, looking at some of the reviews of this, people say that it's smooth, that it's a non-white cast mineral SPF, so it might be great for some people. But, like any kind of zinc oxide sunscreen, you're probably going to have a slight cast to it. So if you have darker skin, it's probably going to show up a little bit there. So, that's just the nature of the zinc oxide. I mean, It's just how it is. Unless you go to like nano, which, people kind of want to stay away from nano. But then I looked at this. The retail price is $148 for 30 milliliters. That's hugely steep for a sunscreen. I mean, sunscreen's expensive as it is, but this is ridiculous. This is probably one of the most expensive mineral sunscreens I've ever seen on the market. So, wow. So is Pavise effective? I'm going to say yes. Of course it's effective. It's a zinc oxide-based sunscreen, so definitely it's going to provide you your UV protection. And I have no doubt that they've done as well. I have no reason to doubt that they've done the SPF testing. So if it says 30, it's an SPF 30. Is this a revolutionary product? There's nothing about it that seems revolutionary to me. Mostly it's the anti-aging claims. They rely sort of just on marketing fluff and ingredients that you've seen everywhere else. There's no robust independent evidence. And $148 for 30 mils? Wow. That, for me, is very hard to sell. You're paying super premium for branding, luxury packaging, and then this proprietary zinc oxide blend, which is just zinc. I mean, there's plenty of better, lower-cost alternatives, in my opinion, that offer SPF 30 to 50, and the formulas are good. And if antioxidants still intrigue you that much, I would suggest you just do a separate niacinamide serum or something to your routine. So Pavise is this luxury mineral sunscreen with this fancy story, but the core ingredients, the zinc oxide, that's old news. And this diamond and glitter stuff, that's all just kind of marketing here. You're essentially paying for branding and exclusivity. There's not a lot of breakthrough science here. Okay, enough of just hearing my voice. We've got a real person who sent in an audio question.
Hi, Beauty Brains. I'm Allie. I live in a place with relatively hard water, and I notice a difference when I use certain clarifying products in my hair. I really like the Bumble & Bumble Sunday shampoo. I recently tried a sample of the Kerastas Premier hair mask, and it was amazing. My hair felt so soft and nice and stayed feeling nice for days after, even after showering again with other products. Unfortunately, the mask is $100 for 200 milliliters, which is a bit out of my grad student budget. I was wondering which ingredients might be the reason for my great results, so I could look for some alternatives that are more affordable.
Well, Kerastas. Now, just so you know, Kerastas is produced by one of the biggest beauty product producer in the world, L'Oreal. Now, Kerastas, I think, started out as an independent salon brand, but of course, as anything goes, once you get very popular, the big guys look at you and they buy you. That's like the exit strategy of most of these salon brands or beauty brands. You build up an audience, get bought by a big guy, and cash in. So that's what Kerastas eventually did. So let's look at this product. You use the Kerastas Premier Mask Filler Reparter and love the results. So that's cool. So you want to know what ingredients are responsible for your great hair day. Now I'm looking at it, and you know what I see here? I see a hair conditioner. The ingredients that make it actually work, we've got behine trimonium methyl sulfate. I mean, and then of course the cetyl alcohol. It's a blend there, but this is pretty standard in conditioners, the mid-tier conditioners. And, they're going to make your hair feel soft and detangled. They're good, but they're not unique to Kerastas. So you'll find them in, Tresemme uses it, OGX, Shea Moisture. Lots of brands use that. Then we have amodimethicone and aminopropanol dimethicone. Again, these are silicones, and they selectively bind to damaged areas of your hair. And they're shiny, they're smooth, they leave your hair feeling great, so they work. So those are ingredients, but you know what? They're found in almost every other product, like say, I don't know, the Aussie 3-Minute Miracle or Dove, and everybody uses it. There's nothing special here. Now they do have a hydrolyzed vegetable protein. Personally, I think that just kind of gets rinsed out. This is, it's a protein silicone hybrid. So maybe it stays in, maybe get some benefit. I just think when you mix in those proteins and on a rinse out product, they just kind of run down your drain. And then of course they have the moisturizers, emollients, butylene glycol, we have caprylic triglycerides, all pretty standard. So I'm not seeing anything in this product that is significantly different than what you might find in other products, Tresemme, OGX, something like that. Now, what makes it seem to work so well? Well, you said you had hard water, and minerals like calcium, magnesium, they might be building up on your hair, and the silicones are certainly going to help sort of mask that coated cuticle. They'll help fill in the gaps, and so you're not going to be as affected by the hard water problem. That silkier, glossier feel that you talk about is the silicones and conditioning agents, and this it's not really any miracle molecule, but I mean it works, and so if it works for you, that's great. Now I would suggest, if that happened to me, I'd say, hey, this product works great. Go to the store and look for the ingredients. So the first ingredient, of course, everyone's going to start with water, cetyl alcohol, acetyl or stearyl alcohol, that's the same stuff. Look for something that has behine trimonium sulfate, and methyl sulfate, and ammo dimethicone. Those are the two main ones there. Try those out. But honestly, just having the right fragrance, that helps make it better too. I mean, Kerastas is effective, and if it's working in hard water, it's working for you. It's silky, hydrating, but it's not really magic. The key ingredients: silicones, cationic surfactants, proteins, emollients. I mean, they're all very common there. So I don't know what to tell you for it. I mean, you're paying for the scent, the branding, the prestige. There's no novel cosmetic chemistry here. This seems like a pretty basic formula. A good formula, don't get me wrong. Of course, L'Oreal and Kerastas are going to put out good products, but I think you could, get almost the same benefits for products that are well under, say, $15 or even $10. But although with inflation, probably, you can buy something just as good for under $20. You just have to look up the ingredients and try that out. Okay, we got a question from a patron. Mishka asks, is there an ingredient or a combination of ingredients proven to help with under-eye dark circles? I have been researching eye creams. They come in small volumes. They are expensive, and from what I found, ranging from $20 to $575. This is all so confusing. If you could provide a little clarity, that would help. Thank you. Well, this is a problem that people have had, for a long time. Under-eye dark circles, it's common, but treating them effectively really depends on understanding what is causing the problem here. So not all the dark circles are the same. They may be caused by excess pigmentation, like post-inflammatory discolorations, or just your genetics. You just happen to have more melanin in that area. There's the vascular viability or visibility. That's, the skin is thinner there, and you could see the blood vessels a little more easily, and so that can make it appear dark. That's a genetic thing. There's structural shadowing, just the way your hair is shaped. If you have deep-seated eyes or you lose a lot of fat, that can kind of make your eyes look darker, or under your eyes. And then there's puffiness from, fluid retention or allergies. And since there's no single problem here, so there's no single ingredient or cream that is going to universally fix everybody's dark circles. There just isn't. But, that said, there are some ingredients that, seem to have been effective in the past, depending on the cause. So, for example, there's puffiness and vascular shadows. Caffeine is probably the most well-researched option here, and the way it works is it constricts the blood vessels, and that can help to reduce swelling. And now this effect is just temporary, but that's how cosmetics are. You just keep, it's a battle, it's a never-ending battle that you just gotta keep putting stuff on, and that's why the cosmetic industry exists. But, so there's not a permanent fix, a temporary fix, but look for something with caffeine. Niacinamide is another ingredient that suggests, has some data behind it. It's, good for brightening and calming the skin. It's widely tolerated by most people, even by people with sensitive skin. So that's there. Another one is vitamin C. If it's properly stabilized, that might be able to reduce pigmentation. And, if you don't have it in a high enough level where it's going to sting, it can be effective. And then retinol is another ingredient there. So you see there's a lot of them. There's new peptides are out like Matrixyl 3000. They say it's offering this firming and anti-aging benefits, but all that data comes from the company. So you could try it. That's one of these things. It's you just got to try a bunch of different things. I'd go in that order. The caffeine, the niacinamide first, the vitamin C's, and get down to the peptides later. Unfortunately, many of these pricey eye creams, they just really are just fancy moisturizers and packaging in a story, because this isn't a problem that we figured out how to easily fix. Ingredients like, gold, snail slime, caviar, they of course they sound exotic and luxurious, but there's not a lot of evidence that these things are helping. Collagen in your topical creams, collagen is not gonna, if you put it on top of your skin, it's not gonna help in any significant way or provide any sort of lasting benefit. And despite the huge price tags, like you said, some of these products are over $500, the value comes from just a few of the ingredients, not the exotic ingredients. And, you do not need to spend $500 on something that's doped with caffeine or niacinamide. You just don't. So, there are many affordable eye products that you can try out. Like the Inculus has this caffeine eye cream, and Ordinary has one too. I would start trying those things out to see if it works on the one that is the reason that you particularly have this problem of darkening under the eyes. But ultimately, if your dark circles are due to some sort of structural shadowing or genetic pigmentation, even the best cream may not make a dramatic difference. And in such cases, cosmetic solutions like color correcting concealers or in-office treatments like fillers or something, they might be more effective, and you might want to go that route. However, if your concern is just mild pigmentation or puffiness, you could try caffeine, niacinamide, and maybe a gentle retinol might be worthwhile to try out. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to work, but it's better than nothing. And that's what beauty products are really all about, right? Just trying something, see if it works. And if you find something that works, don't even question it. Just use it. If it works, it works. Now, if you're spending hundreds of dollars on something and it works, I would then say, okay, it works. Why does that work? And let me find something that's less expensive that can work just as well because it has some specific ingredient in it. That's always a good strategy to follow if you want to save some money on your beauty products. All right, we have time for one more question. Comes to us from Chiara. Chiara says, I live in Italy, and by now it's already 20 degrees Celsius. 20 let's see, that's about 68 degrees Fahrenheit for you North American or US people anyway. All right, and the UV index is already 7 to 8 at peak hours. So my question is, how do we practice sun safety diligently? In the summer months, I feel most comfortable with European and Australian SPFs. In the past, I have used the Altruist SPF 50, the Bondi Sands Face Sunscreen, Garnier. For the body, I have no particulars, so I'll just go with the cheapest sunscreen that I can find. And I find it easy to be diligent with facial use and reapplication, also due to vanity. I find myself slacking off with the body application, so do you have any advice? Also, What are we using on the palms of our hands? I want to use a sufficient stick to avoid the sticky feeling on my fingers. Is that enough? Do you personally use UPF clothing together with your sunscreen? Also, since you quite often mention your travels, do you happen to have Euro sunscreen recommendations to share? Love listening to the pod. Well, thank you for those questions about sunscreen. I will say that sunscreen is very important, protecting yourself from the sun, and you're already ahead of the game by being aware of the UV index and using proven sunscreens like the ones you mentioned. Now, an index of 7 to 8 is pretty high, especially in the late spring in Italy. So daily protection is crucial for your health, not just for anti-aging, but also, cancer prevention. So there you go. And you're right that the European and Australian sunscreens, they tend to feel more wearable because they just have more UVA filters and UVB filters than you can find in the United States. And so that allows those formulators to make things that have, more elegant feel, products with a more elegant feel. And, someday maybe the United States will get their act together, but it's not anytime soon. That's what always amuses me. The people said, oh, Europe is so much less regulated or more regulated than the United States, but here's one where the United States is more regulated than Europe, so there's that. Anyway, so don't feel guilty for skipping some of the reef-safe natural hype. The evidence shows broad-spectrum chemical sunscreens are safe and effective, and the whole thing about reef safety is unproven science. Maybe there's a problem, but the reality is the thing that's killing the coral reefs is not the sunscreen of people wearing it by them. It's the warming up of the planet and warming up of the oceans. And that's doing so much more damage. There's scant evidence that it's the sunscreen. But some people disagree on that. All right, let's talk about the face and the body reapplication. Now, you're not alone in being great about your face, but less consistent about your body. And here's sort of some science-backed low-effort strategy. You can use body sunscreens that feel invisible, so lightweight gels, sprays, milk textures like the Eucerin, the Garnier, you can use that. Banana Boat has theirs. Everybody has them. And to reapply, they're less likely to trigger that, greasy skin syndrome. You can also apply these things before you leave the house, so you could do the full body application, once you get out of the shower or something, and that way you avoid missing any of the spots. And then you can also, keep sunscreen in your car, your bag, and then just whenever you think of it, you can do the lazy reapply if you're going to the beach or you're going on a hike or outside or something. So make it available for you, and so that'll make it easier to reapply. Now, honestly, for me, I forget to reapply, I guess. I try, my son's strategy is to wear long sleeves, wear clothes. And as far as the clothes rating, I'm a little skeptical of this rating thing for clothes. I mean, the testing there, it doesn't seem to me to be really relevant. So yeah, wear clothes, and if it's thin enough to see through, it's probably thin enough for sun to get through. But you'll know that because you'll get burned or something. So I wear like a t-shirt. The sun's not going through that t-shirt. It's not burning me. So there's no, the SPF of clothes is like 1 million or so. There's just literally it's not something that I think much of. Now, you mentioned about the palms. The palms on the hand aren't usually prone to sunburns, and that's because they're thicker and they're more keratinized. But it's good to be thinking about some hand exposure, and so especially the back of your hands. Back of your hands are not as protected as the palms. The palms are pretty protected, so I wouldn't worry too much about the palm exposure. It's not really an area. I mean, you could try to use like a makeup sponge or a puff and tap a facial screen to reapply, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. And as far as the clothing goes, is it worth it? It's good to wear a hat keeps the sun off of your face. But, these UPF ratings and things, I don't find them to be credible. So I wouldn't put a lot. I mean, yes, wear clothes, okay? And the more clothes you have, the more skin you cover up, the better. Then you don't have to worry if you missed a spot or reapply your sunscreen or something like that. But that's pretty much my advice on that. It's good to worry about wear your sunscreens, protect yourself from the sun, especially in the higher UVF ratings there. Do that. Wear as much clothing as you can, feel comfortable. I always cover up when I go to the beach. It drives my wife nuts, but I don't get burned that way. And don't worry about that UPF rating. Clothes work, Speaking of that, I think I hear the music. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you get a chance, can you go over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review? That's going to help other people find the show and ensure that we have a full docket of beauty questions to answer. Speaking of questions, if you have one and you want to get your voice on the show, just record it on your smartphone and email it to thebeautybrains@gmail.com. Or you can just use the form that I have in the show notes. Just answer the form there. The Beauty Brains are also on Patreon. If you like what we do here and we don't have commercials to support it, that's because we are supported by our patrons. If you want to help support the show and cover some of the cost of making a show, go to patreon.com/thebeautybrains and subscribe at any level. Also, you can follow us on our various social media accounts. On Instagram, we're at The Beauty Brains 2018. On X, we're at The Beauty Brains. On Bluesky, we're also at The Beauty Brains. And we have a Facebook page, a TikTok page, and now, just starting now, all of our podcasts are going to be up on YouTube. It's just a static picture on the audio, but you can play it through YouTube, and apparently a lot of people listen to podcasts that way. So thanks again for listening, everybody. And remember, as Valerie always says, be brainy about your beauty. Thanks, everyone. Kittens.